The scriptorium is for monks quiet, disciplined, God-fearing, and you are none of those things. You are a boy of perhaps 11, small for your age, with ink-stained fingertips, a tunic that's 2 sizes too large, and the audacity to sit among holy men copying sacred texts you barely understand. Your name doesn't matter here. They call you pure boy, sometimes ill-pure, that boy. Mostly, you are just a smudge on the edges of the parchment, something to be tolerated until you grow useful. Or invisible dot, you arrived in winter, snow in your shoes, mud in your teeth. They say your mother left you at the monastery gates with a crust of bread and a note none of the monks could read. The bread went to the pigs. The note went to the fire. You went to the cellar. That's where they keep the spare boy's dot at first. Your job was fetching wood, filling ink pots, sweeping the chapel floor before prime. Then Brother Oswin saw you tracing the letters carved into the choir stalls with your finger again and again, until they left imprints in your skin. The next morning, you were moved upstairs, given a stool, a scrap of vellum, a dull quill dot, and so your apprenticeship began. You are not a monk. You do not chant. You do not pray. You are not permitted to touch gold leaf or raise your voice. But you may copy, slowly, painfully, one Latin syllable at a time. You learn not through kindness, but through corrections, red slashes across your lines, margins filled with notes you cannot yet decipher. Still you copy. The scriptorium is cold in the mornings. Your breath fogs the vellum. The candles flicker above your head like golden flies. Brother Ulrich, the oldest of the scribes, snores with his eyes open. He smells of vinegar and crushed thyme. You avoid him. Your favorite monk is Brother Abelard. He does not smile, but he does not scowl either. He teaches by example, quietly scraping mistakes from the page with a curved knife, showing you how to cut quills so the nib splits just enough to hold ink without dripping. His hands are steady, his face unmoved. You want to be like him. You want the quill to obey you, the way it obeys him. At night, you lie awake in the dormitory, listening to the coughs and mutters of other boys. One dreams of fish, another waits the bed. You dream of letters curving black forms that dance across your eyelids, like saints in procession. Sometimes the dreams turn dark inky shapes melting, pages burning, voices chanting words in a tongue you do not know. You wake sweating. You do not tell anyone. After a month, you're allowed to mix ink. It's not just black. There's oak gall from the trees in the orchard, iron salts that stain your fingernails blue, and a tiny bit of wine. Not the good kind. You stir it with a bone spoon until it smells like rust and rain. Your hands are always dirty now. One morning, Brother Abelard lets you copy a song. Just one line. It takes you 3 hours. You trace the letters in lead first, then ink them over with the care of someone carving their own name into stone. When it's done, he nods once, not approval, not praise, just permission to keep going. You think it might be the best moment of your life. The days pass in silence and smoke. You eat boiled beans and bread so hard it blunts your teeth. You say nothing. No one asks. The other boys fight sometimes. You do not. You are too tired, too careful. Besides, your hands matter more than your fists. A broken finger would end your work. And you love the work. There is peace in it. Copying is not creation, but it is transformation. The empty page becomes a song. A law, a letter to a king. Something lasting. You begin to notice patterns. Some scribes shape their G like a curled dragon's tail. Others make R so tall it spears the next line. You start copying their flourishes when they're not looking. No one comments until Brother Ulrich smacks the back of your head with his inky palm and tells you to stop being clever. Still, you smile, because he noticed. One stormy afternoon, a visitor arrives. Not a monk, a man in fine wool with a feather in his hat. He speaks with authority, which is dangerous. He's shown into the scriptorium by Prior Theodoric himself, who nods to the monks and then points at you. You freeze. The man kneels beside you, looks at your page, says nothing. Then he says your name, your real name, not boy, not pure, your name. You stare at him. You do not speak. He smiles. You are good, he says, for a child who should have died on the road. Brother Abelard stiffens. Prior Theodoric coughs. The man stands, drops a coin onto your desk. Gold. You've never seen gold up close before. It winks at you like sunlight through glass. He leaves without explaining. No one touches the coin. That night, you dream again, but not of burning pages. You dream of a tall library, a place with windows and shelves and more books than you can count. You dream of warmth and of your name. You do not know who took it. Brother Abelard, one of the older boys, even Prior Theodoric himself. No one speaks of it. You do not ask. You understand now that certain things are given, and certain things are taken, and neither are yours to hold. But the memory of that coin glows in your mind like a candle behind closed eyes. You touched it once. That is enough. In the days that follow, you are watched more closely. Brother Abelard gives you better parchment. You're allowed to sharpen your own quills. Once, you even illuminate a letter with a red ink. Just one. But it changes everything. You begin copying longer texts. Proverbs, homilies, lists of names in ancient Latin. Some days, your hand cramps. You learn to write through the pain. Other days, your back aches from the cold bench. You learn to hunch. With grace. The monks don't say it, but something has shifted. You're not just a helper now. You are becoming a scribe. Late one evening, after the other boys have fallen asleep, Brother Abelard taps your shoulder and nods toward the scriptorium. You follow. He hands you a page. A letter, half finished. The writing is beautiful, flowing. Precise, the sort of script you've studied for months, but never dared to emulate. I'm tired, he says, rubbing his eyes. Finish this. You stare at him, blinking. It's just one page. Don't ruin it. He leaves. The door shuts behind him. You sit at the desk. You dip the quill. Breathe. And write. Each letter is careful, slow, reverent. You trace his shapes, not copying, but continuing as though his hand flows into yours. The candle sputters. The ink thickens in the cold. You write until the last line, the last word, the final graceful mark. Then you stop. You sign it. Not your name, of course. Just 3 tiny dots in the corner. A mark no one will notice. But you'll know. You return to the dormitory just before dawn. In the morning. The letter is gone. A week later, another man visits, this one dressed in gray. He reads your newest copy silently. Then he smiles. Just slightly. This one, he says to Prior Theodoric. You are sent away with a bundle of pages, 2 shirts, and half a loaf of better bread than you've ever eaten. You are told you will serve in another priory, where the library is larger and the ink flows freely. No goodbyes, just nods, and one lingering glance from Brother Abelard as you pass. You leave the monastery the same way you entered, wrapped in winter, clutching words you do not fully understand. But this time, you walk with purpose, because you know now that ink remembers what mouths forget, that quiet hands can speak louder than voices, and that, sometimes, the smallest mark on the page is the one that lasts the longest. You are no longer just the boy. You are the writer. You arrive at Morwen Priory in a cart filled with firewood and fish. It smells like brine and bark and horses that haven't bathed in weeks. The cart driver doesn't speak your language and doesn't care if your knees are numb or if your elbows are bruised from every bump in the road. Your cargo, not company. The priory is stone and silence and fog. It's built low to the earth, like it expects trouble. The walls are weathered, the gate rusted, the air filled with gulls. You step down from the cart into a world of gray mist and wet flags. No one welcomes you. Eventually, a novice with a broken sandal appears. He gestures, no words, just a flick of the wrist, and you follow him past a cold cloister, through a chapel that smells like beeswax and old linen, and down a corridor with cracked tiles. At the end, the library. Your new home. It is nothing like the scriptorium you left. This place is alive. The shelves are high and crammed. Scrolls stick out like tongues. Books lie open on slanted desks. There are no statues, no golden reliquaries, only parchment, vellum, ink, dust, and the low murmur of pages being turned with reverence. You take a breath, and it smells like history, like learning, like the inside of an old man's thoughts. Monk looks up. He is tall, thin, and so old that his eyebrows have turned the color of snow. His fingers are blue with ink. He does not smile. You're the boy, he says. Not boy, the boy. You nod. He squints. We'll see. His name is Brother Cyric. He is the librarian, the master of the words, the guardian of knowledge in a building, full of forgotten saints and dried-out candles. He does not believe in kindness, but he does believe in precision. Your training begins at once. You do not copy, not yet. First you clean. Scrolls must be dusted with feathers. Never cloth. Cloth breaks the fibers. Manuscripts must be turned with 2 hands. Only 2 fingers on the edges. No touching the ink. No sneezing near the books. And if you must cough, go outside, you catalog. You sharpen quills for others. You match pages torn from one codex to another, based on watermarks you can barely see unless you hold them to the candlelight at just the right angle. You sleep in the West Wing, in a cell barely large enough to stretch your legs. There is a straw, mattress, a single robe, and a basin of cold water. You keep the basin clean, the robe patched, the mattress tolerable. You rise before dawn. You sleep after midnight. Brother Cyric speaks rarely. When he does, it is always with instruction. Vellum goes to the south wall. Latin texts here, Old French there. Hebrew ask first. Be gentle. These pages are older than your bones. You learn. You listen more than you speak. You read more than you write. And then, slowly, you are allowed back to the quill. It begins with glosses, margin notes, corrections, clarifications. Tiny writing in red ink. then small poems, then missives from one priory to another. Nothing sacred, nothing royal. Just letters. But they are yours. You write as though the pen is part of your hand. One day, you are asked to recopy a damaged manuscript. A collection of herbal remedies written in a tangled Latin script so dense you think it was written in anger. You study it for days before daring a word. Brother Cyric reads the first page. He does not speak. But the next morning, he hands you another. That is as close to praise as you will ever get. You live for it. The seasons turn winter again. The ink freezes in its pots if you don't keep it by the fire. Your breath fogs the vellum. You lose feeling in your toes for days. But your fingers never stop. Sometimes you forget to eat. You forget to sleep. The world narrows to ink, parchment, and the next word, the next perfect line. And yet, for all your effort, you remain nameless. The monks call you scriptor minor, the lesser scribe. You are not permitted to sign your work. You are a vessel, not a voice. You try not to mind, but sometimes you dream of a page that bears your name. Then, one storm-lashed night, everything. CHANGESA knock. Loud, urgent. The gate bell rings. A rider from the coast, soaked through, carries a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. He's escorted into the library like a relic. You and Brother Cyric meet him at the long table. Inside the bundle, a manuscript, damaged, wet, torn, illuminated, gilded, with pages like silk. The script fine, Italian, elegant. The seal royal. Brother Cyric unfolds the message tucked within. His mouth tightens. A copy, he says, for the Duke of Rennes. In 2 weeks, you look at the pages. Dozens of them. Symbols, maps, letters in a style you've only glimpsed in foreign charters. 2 weeks. Why not send it to Paris? You ask before you can stop yourself. Cyric's eyes fix on you, because Paris doesn't owe the Duke a favor, he says. We do. That night, you are not sent to bed. You begin copying by dawn. Your fingers are blistered. By the next evening, you've only completed 6 pages. Brother Cyric corrects 3 of them. Harshly. You start again. Day and night blur. You eat only when forced. Sleep in half hours. You dip your quill into ink, and your hands shake from fatigue. But you keep writing. On the 4th day, your wrist cramps so badly you can't hold the pen. You bind it. Continue with the other hand. On the 6th, you see double. You bathe your face in snow. Return to your desk. Brother Cyric does not praise, but he watches. At midnight on the 13th day, the last page is finished. You lay it beside. The original. It is not perfect, but it is good, more than good. Brother Cyric studies it. He turns each page slowly. You watch him, heart pounding. He says nothing. Then he folds the pages, binds them, and seals them with red wax. The writer returns. At dawn, before he leaves, he turns to you. Did you write this? You hesitate. Yes. He nods. And takes it. You expect to return to your tasks, dusting scrolls, mixing ink. Instead, Brother Cyric leads you to a side chamber. It is small, quiet, filled with early light. There is a desk, a quill, a full stack of blank vellum. Single book, Liber Scriptorum, the library's official registry. He opens it, hands you the quill. Name, he says. You blink? Mine? He nods. You write it. The letters are shaky. Not from nerves, but from joy. Your name, in ink, on record. You are no longer the boy. You are Scriptor Evenus, and this is just the beginning. You are 17 when your world first expands beyond vellum and stone. You have lived more years inside monasteries than out of them, and more years with ink on your hands than warmth in your bones. You are no longer a boy. You are a scribe, perhaps even a good one. Your name is written now, not often, not loudly, but it exists in margins, in letters, in lists of contributors. Evenus fecit. Evenus made this, but recognition is a sharp thing. It cuts in both directions. One spring morning, the prior of Morwen calls you to his study. He has the smell of candle wax and decisions. He places a scroll on the desk, tied in blue ribbon, and gestures for you to sit. You do not sit. Not until he nods again. The scroll bears the ducal seal, the Duke of Rennes. You haven't heard the name. In 2 years, not since the manuscript, not since your fingers bled onto his coat of arms. He requests your hand, the prior says, specifically. By name, you blink. He wants a letter. The prior smiles thinly. More than a letter, I suspect, but that is what he asked for. You wait. There's always a condition. He will send for you. You will go to him, temporarily, as a guest, and representative of this house. You've never left the priory, not truly, not past the woods, not into the cities of wool and trade. The sea you've smelled your entire life, you've never seen it. Your voice comes out smaller than you intend. What if I fail? The prior looks at you, not unkindly. Then you fail as one of us, but I do not think you will. The journey to Rennes is longer than it should be. The roads are muddy. The inns reek of beer and horses. Your escort is a soldier with a limp who whistles through his teeth and says things like, "You're smaller than I thought," and hope you can read a contract. When the city finally appears, it is made of slate and ambition. You've never seen so many windows, so many people, so much sound. Carts creak over cobblestones. Vendors shout from beneath striped awnings. There's a boy juggling geese and a man playing music on glass. You can't tell which is stranger. The soldier leads you through gates taller than churches, and into the shadow of the Duke's residence, a place of marble staircases and servants, who speak without moving their lips. You're given a room with a bed softer than anything you've ever touched. You do not sleep. The next morning, you're summoned. The Duke of Rennes is not old. He's perhaps 30, draped in velvet and perfume. He wears a ring on every finger and speaks as though each word is weighed for currency. He does not ask how you are. "I need a letter," he says. "A dangerous one." You blink. "Not forged," he continues, "but persuasive. Something that sounds ancient, as though it were found in a forgotten library. A letter from a bishop, perhaps, condemning the Bishop of Angiers. Something that would embarrass him, quietly, without blood. You understand now. He does not want a letter. He wants a lie. He wants it beautifully written. You feel your stomach twist. You are a scribe, not a weapon. He watches your face carefully. You're wondering if this is sinful. You say nothing. He leans closer. "I won't make you do it. I'll ask again in 2 days. You'll say yes." He is not wrong. You spend those days in the ducal library, a room larger than your entire priory. Books from Italy, Spain, Egypt, bound in crimson leather and gold thread. Some you've only heard rumors of. You touch them with shaking reverence. And yet, you can't focus. You think of Brother Abelard, of snow-fogged mornings in the scriptorium, of Brother Siric's quiet nods and cracked fingernails, of truth, and how often it must kneel to power. Could write this letter. It would take 2 hours. The script would be flawless. It would be a lie. But what if it weren't? That night, you search the archives. Quietly, methodically. You look for real letters, authentic ones, between bishops, between rival monasteries, between priests with grudges and parchment to spare. You find them. Dozens. One in particular catches your eye. A letter written nearly a century ago by a minor bishop to another, full of veiled insults, accusations of impropriety, and references to a heretical sermon. You copy it line for line and adjust the names slightly, enough to suggest. You bring it to the Duke the next morning. He reads it once, twice, then smiles. Elegant, he says. Sharp, but not fatal. Very clerical. He signs it. Stamps it. It will be passed along. Whispered. Use. You have given him what he asked for, but not what he wanted. He does not notice. You return to the priory 2 weeks later with heavier robes, a small pouch of gold, and a silence lodged deep in your throat. Brother Cyric doesn't ask where you went, but he notices the gold. He nods once. You are paid. Now you owe. And so you work harder, longer. You begin teaching the younger boys. You correct their strokes, their posture, their spacing. You teach them to fear ink blots and love precision. But one boy, a thin lad named Pereng, never stops asking questions. Why do we write if no one knows our names? You hesitate. Because the words are more important than the writer. He squints. I don't believe that. Neither do you. Not any more. In the autumn, a storm floods the lower vault. You are among those sent to rescue the manuscript's hoisting. Scrolls above your head, ferrying books in oilcloth sacks through waist-deep water. It is the worst week of your life. When the water recedes, dozens of works are lost. Pages blurred, ink lifted. Some volumes disintegrate in your hands. Brother Cyric doesn't weep, but his voice shakes. Later that week, he asks you to write an inventory of the damaged texts. It takes 3 days. At the bottom of the last page, without thinking, you add a sentence. What cannot be saved must be remembered. Brother Cyric reads it, circles the line in red, leaves it in. Your name begins to travel. Other monasteries request copies in the hand of Ivanus. A nun from St. Cleda sends you a letter asking how you treat vellum in dry climates. A merchant from Ghent asks you to design a legal codex with elegance suitable for reading aloud. You are still young, but now you are known, not widely, not famously, but in corners, in cloisters, among those who believe that ink is the soul's longest shadow. One winter morning, you find a bundle on your desk, a manuscript. Unfinished. The pages are brittle, the writing faint, but it's his hand, Brother Abelard. You recognize his A immediately. The note tucked inside is brief. I am dying. Please finish it. No flourishes, just truth. You begin copying that afternoon. It is a psalter elegant, but sparse. He had written nearly half. You match his strokes, his pace, his choices. For days, it feels like speaking with him. You finish it in a week and sign both your names. Abelard et IV and a. No one crosses it out. That spring, Brother Cyric collapses in the library. You are there. You catch him. He lives, but only for 3 more. Days. Before he loses speech, he presses something into your palm. A key. It opens a drawer you've never touched. Inside, a ledger. Dozens of names. Dozens of scripts. Notes in the margins. Comments in red. A history of every scribe to pass through Morwen Priory since it was founded. You find your name, added in his handwriting. Beside it, Prometit Lumen. He promises light. You copy the entire ledger. By hand. And add your own student's name to the next line. The sea is still calling. But for now, you stay. Because there are words that need saving. Truths that need telling. Lives that need. Recording. And sometimes all it takes is ink and a name. You are 24 when you are asked to make something beautiful. Not functional. Not forged. Not persuasive or hidden beneath the surface of power and quiet scandal. Beautiful. The commission comes from a noblewoman in distant Normandy, a widow, of wealth and little patience, who wishes to donate a book of hours to a nearby convent in honor of her late husband. She wants it to be suitable for angels, and she's willing to pay a sum that makes the prior blink twice. You'll need colors, he says, and gold, and time. You ask how long you have. 3 seasons, he says. If it's not done by harvest, the convent will take offense. You nod. 3 seasons. It will be your first illuminated manuscript. The vellum arrives in thick stacks, smoother than anything you've ever touched. You rub a corner between your fingers and feel nothing but the potential to fail. But you do not turn away. You have made many things, letters, contracts, psalters, maps, but this is different. A book of hours is not for kings or dukes. It is not political or practical. It is personal. A small book of prayers to be held by a woman's hands, opened every day like a door to something softer than the world. You know how to make it precise. You've trained for that. But how do you make it tender? The first thing you do is visit the herb garden, not to gather ingredients, but to speak with Sister Isolde, the only person in the priory who understands how to make green that does not fade. She teaches you to grind woad leaves with vinegar and wine. You learn that saffron must be used sparingly too much, and the gold overtakes the page. Vermilion should be stored in a tightly sealed jar. Otherwise, it loses its brightness. Color, she says, is like virtue. It must be handled with care, or it becomes a vice. You nod, though you don't fully understand. She also gives you an egg. Why? You ask. For the gold, she replies. You'll see. The work begins in late spring. You design the margins first. Soft vines curling around the text like ivy clinging to old stone. Tiny birds, bees, a rabbit curled into a circle. A fox with one paw raised. Nothing grand. Just the garden made ink. The text is copied slowly. Each word spaced with breath. Each letter shaped with the sort of quiet you learned long ago from Brother Abelard. How silence can speak when formed with care. Then comes the gilding. You mix the gold with egg yolk, just as Sister Isolde said. You paint it into small raised shapes, a halo here, a sunburst there. When it dries, you burnish it with a dog's tooth tied to a stick. It shines like fallen starlight. You almost cry the first time. You get it right. Other scribes begin to drift past your table in the afternoons. They pretend not to look, but you hear their breath catch, when they see the glint of gold between the vines. You don't say anything. You just keep working. Some nights, you sleep at your desk, not because you must, because you want to. There's something holy in this labor-like prayer, but with ink instead of incense. Halfway through the summer, disaster strikes. You wake to find that the vellum has warped. Not all of it, just 3 pages. Enough to matter. They curl like dried petals, the paint flaking, the text distorted. You stare at them for hours. Eventually, you cut them away. You bury them in the garden, beneath the rosemary bush. When Sister Isolde finds you there, she does not scold. She simply presses a sprig into your hand and says, "Start again." You do dot, and the second time, it's better dot as the harvest moon begins to rise. The book nears completion. It is small but weighty. The spine is reinforced with leather-dyed blue as dusk. The prayers are arranged with care, and each hour marked with a tiny icon, a bird for lauds, a flame for prime, a wheat stalk for sext. You hesitate before the final page. It is blank. Intentionally, so the noblewoman has left it to your discretion. You think for a long time about what to place there. A verse? A blessing? Your name? No. You paint a single star, gold, faint, and no larger than the tip of your smallest finger. It glows. Quietly, like a promise. When the courier arrives, you hand the book over yourself. He doesn't bow. You don't expect him to. But before he turns to leave, he says she's heard of you. A lady. She said you were the one with hands like Patience. You nod once. That night, you do not sleep. You watch the moon instead, rising soft and round above the priory roof, and wonder if the lady will see the star. After the book of hours, your life changes again. Not all at once, but slowly. Requests come more frequently. A bishop asks for an illuminated genealogy. A merchant wants a codex of rare animals, each one rendered in color. A scholar offers you a place in his school in Chartres. You decline. You're not ready to leave. Not yet. Instead, you write. You teach. Begin a second book. Not commissioned, not requested, just your own. You call it the Book of Quiet Things. It is not religious. Though it is reverent. It contains drawings of sleeping cats, of cracked windows, of candles burning low. It lists the names of herbs and their uses, not just medicinal, but emotional. Basil for fear, mint for grief, thyme for remembering. You write about how to mend a book's spine using thread soaked in tea. You write about the boy who once turned a spit and dreamed of letters. You write about the sound of parchment being scraped with pumice. You write about silence. No one knows you're making it. It's a secret you share only with the ink. One evening, just before the frost returns, Perrine, the boy you once taught, enters your chamber with a letter. He's taller now, more certain. You're proud of him. You break the seal. It's from the lady. She's dying. Not fast, but soon. She asks you to come. I would like to see the hands that made the prayers, she writes, before I forget how to fold my own. You go. Her manor is not far. 2 days on foot. You carry nothing but a small pouch, and you're unfinished. Book of Quiet Things. She meets you in a room full of windows. Her hair is white. Her voice a whisper, but her eyes still read everything. She holds the Book of Volk. Hours in her lap. It is worn now. The cover is stained with oil and sunlight. The pages are turned often. She shows. You a section her favorite .compline. She touches the tiny star at the end. I see it every night, she says. It makes the dark less loud. You say nothing. There's nothing to say. When she sleeps, you slip your book of quiet things beneath her pillow. You do not tell her. Some things do not need names. You return to the priory with colder hands and a quieter heart. But you do not stop. You begin work on a new book. It will not be illuminated. It will not be paid for. It will be full of empty space, so that others may fill it. You title the first page, "To be continued," not because it is locked away or disguised in code, but because it is so clearly written for someone else that to see it feels like standing in a doorway you weren't invited through. And yet, one rainy afternoon in the scriptorium, it falls from a sheaf of merchant records as you sort through a request from the Priory of St. Everald. The envelope is pale blue, handmade paper, smooth to the touch and heavy with care. There is no name on the outside, just a crest you've never seen, two interlocking keys, one silver, one green. The seal has already been broken. By accident? By design? The letter inside is not addressed. It begins with a confession. To the one I cannot name, I once believed that writing was only for truth, that to put words on a page was to anchor the soul in certainty. But now I see that words can be shelter too, a space between the storm and the silence, a lantern for when there is no road. I do not know if you will ever read this. Perhaps that is best, but still, I write because someone must remember. And if not me, then who? You do not read further. Not yet. You place the letter aside. Return to your work. But all that evening, it hums in your mind like a string pulled taut. Later, in your cell, you read the rest by candlelight. It's written in a hand finer than most nobles. The ink is dark and unfaded, the grammar perfect. But human. The letter tells of a monastery destroyed, not in war, not by fire, but by silence. The author, whoever they were, writes of scholars exiled for asking questions, of books quietly removed from shelves, of a prior who spoke often of humility, but feared doubt like poison. They speak of a text unnamed once held in the vaults, now missing, and of a witness, a girl. She was 12. She had written a poem. Questioned why the angels in the Psalter were always men. She was not punished. She simply disappeared. The letter ends without signature, only a postscript. If you are reading this, then perhaps the poem survives. And if the poem survives, then so do I. You don't sleep that night. You don't dream. You rise before the bells, as you did when you were a boy, and sit in the dark thinking of what it means for words to be dangerous. Not persuasive, not forged. Just honest. In the morning, you return to the stack of merchant records. You find the accompanying parcel, a ledger with a torn spine. Inside, a loose page folded into the binding. A poem, written in a cramped hand. You almost miss it. It's not about angels. It's about hunger. About the way a child's mouth opens for bread and closes on silence. About the weight of unanswered questions. About ink as resistance. You sit with it for a long time. Then you bring it to the prior. He reads it twice, says nothing, and hands it back. There's no crest, he says. No request. No name. It's not our concern. You look at him. Then whose is it? He doesn't answer. You return to your desk. Lay the poem beside the letter, and begin to copy, not once, but 12 times, each in a different style, a different hand. Old Gothic, Roman uncial, Carolingian. You bind them in a small leather folio, unmarked. Then you write a letter of your own, to the one who wrote without. A name. I have read your words. They are still alive. So, perhaps you are too. There is no honor in obedience when it serves only silence. There is no holiness in forgetting. There is only this. A child wrote the truth, and it was buried. I will not bury it again. If you see this, come. And if not, then know that your words remain. Here, with me. Even as asterisk, you send 3 copies to convents, 2 to universities, 1 to a merchant you trust. You do not expect a reply, but a week later it comes, a scrap of parchment, folded twice. No name, just 1 line. The girl is alive. Everything changes, not all at once. But quickly. The priory receives a new request from a city you've never visited, bearing the seal of a bishop with no recorded sermons. He asks for your hand to write a treatise on silence. You decline, but you remember the name. It matches one in the letter. You begin asking questions. Carefully. Quietly. You write to Brother the Martin Lion, a scribe with good memory and better records. You ask him for the names of vanished monasteries. He returns a list. You recognize 1. Saint Benut and Vow. The name of the girl was not recorded, but a novice disappeared the same year. You go to the archives. You dig. You find fragments, pages torn from bindings, annotations left in old prayer books. You piece together her voice. Her questions. Her fear. Her fury. Her name. Eventually. Mara. She was the daughter of a glassworker, taken in for her steady hands and sharp mind. Wrote a hymn. Offended the abbot. Refused to recant. Was removed. Erased. But not forgotten. Not now. Send a final letter, addressed not to a monastery, but to the world. You copy the poem 12 more times. Then 20. Then 100. You teach your students to write it in every style. You slip it into books, hide it in the margins of psalters, bind it into empty spaces. Until the truth can no longer be traced to one voice, because it is everywhere, because it is all of you. Months pass. The girl does not return, but her poem begins to copied by hands you've never touched, sent from cities you've never seen, whispered in classrooms, sung in corners, taught to girls learning to write for the first time. Her poem is not sacred, but it is safe. And that is enough. Years later, a child knocks at the priory gate. She holds a copy of the Book of Quiet Things. It's worn at the corners. Inside, beneath, a drawing of a bird curled in sleep. Is the star? She points to it. My mother told me you made this. You nod. She said you'd teach me. You pause. Then hold the door open. The girl stays. She writes awkwardly at first. Letters too tall. Margins crooked, but her questions are sharp. And one day, she draws an angel. It is laughing, and it is a girl. You do not correct her. You hang it above your desk. You no longer call yourself the ink-stained boy. You no longer have to, because now there are many hands. Many voices. And together, you are writing something no one can erase. You don't announce it. There are no proclamations or new creeds scratched into lintels. No bells ring. But it changes. It starts with the shelves. You add a new one low to the ground, where younger eyes might see without climbing. It holds nothing. Sacred. No psalters. No homilies. Just poems, drawings, riddles. Things written with joy instead of fear. The first to notice is the new girl. Her name is Estrelle. She speaks softly and writes loudly. Her letters slope uphill, as if chasing something just out of sight. She writes a story about a fox who wanted to be a priest. You copy it into vellum yourself, bind it in red cloth, place it beside the book of quiet things. She sees it, sees her name on the spine, and cries without sound. You do not speak. You just sit beside her. It is the first book in a new collection, the library of the loud. You do not say it aloud, but in your mind you dedicate it to Mara. There are other children now. Not many, just enough. A baker's son who can't read, but memorizes stories like thread on a loom. A merchant's niece who keeps asking why the stars never fall. A shepherd boy who stares at the ink pots like they might bite him. You do not teach them as you were taught. You teach them to question. Margins, to test ink, to press two truths together and see what cracks. You show them how to mend a torn page and how to recognize when it should remain torn. You say, often, you don't have to write what's asked. One of them asks, then what do we write? You? Smile. What's missing? One summer, a girl arrives from the north. She is silent for her first week. Writes nothing. Eats little. You find her one morning behind the stables, copying letters into the dust with her finger. You crouch beside her and draw a question mark. She wipes it away. The next day, she asks to learn how to gild a page. By autumn, she's illuminating prayers in silver and blue. When she finally tells you her name, Enza, it feels like a small triumph over forgetting. You write it in your ledger. Beneath a gold leaf star. You begin sending books outward, not requests. Not commissions. Books. Unmarked. Free. Wrapped in waxed cloth and sealed only with a scrap of wool. Some are copied prayers, others original poems. A few are blank, meant to be filled by strangers. You leave them in carts, in market stalls, in the hands of pilgrims. A boy carries one to Spain. A sailor takes one north. A nun at a distant convent sends you a note. Whoever wrote the song about the cracked bowl, thank you. I needed it. You don't know which student wrote that song. You don't ask. You just write back. She says you're welcome. The church begins to notice. At first, gently. Letters arrive bearing questions masked as compliments. They praise your energy, your dedication to the written word, and your novel approach to inclusion. They ask to review your teaching materials. You send them the poem about the fox. They do not reply. Then comes the bishop. He arrives on a gray horse with blue feathers braided into its mane. His robe is crimson, his eyes dry and sharp as old parchment. He requests an audience. You grant it. He walks the scriptorium in silence, trailing gloved fingers across the desks. Children glance up from their writing, but do not stop. He says, your priory is not like the others. You reply, nor are the children. He eyes a girl drawing bees in the margins of a song. There are rules. He says, some should be rewritten. You answer. He does not smile. That night you expect a summons, a reprimand, a reassignment. Instead, you receive a book. Unmarked. Handwritten. Inside. A prayer written in the voice of a stonemason begging God for soft walls. You recognize the style. It's his. You say nothing, but you place the book on the shelf, beside Estrell's fox. You're older now. Not old, but enough. Your fingers ache in the winter. Your back stiffens after long hours at the desk, but your ink still flows. Your voice is steady. And your students have become teachers. Anza now leads the midday scriptorium.estrel. Lay manages the archive. Her fox has evolved. He's now a chaplain. And surprisingly good at chess. The Priory of Morwen has become something different. Not larger. But deeper. A place where ink is not just record, but rebellion. Not just prayer, but invitation. One night, a storm breaks the east window. You gather the children, candles lit, parchment covered, and work until dawn protecting the books. When the sky clears and the sun floods the ruined frame, you realize you are weeping, not because of what was nearly lost, but because you did not lose it alone. That spring, a traveler comes. She is quiet, tall, older than you. She walks like someone used to watching her back. She carries a scroll. Inside, a poem. You recognize it. It's Marill's. The traveler sees the recognition in your eyes. She's still writing. She says, your hands tremble. The woman places a second scroll in your hand. It is blank. She said you'd know what to do. You do. You gather your students. You tell them the story of the nameless letter, of the missing girl, of the poem no one was supposed to read. And then you say, now finish it. They do. Together. Over the course of 3 weeks, 24 hands shape the lines. They add stanzas, stories, questions. By the end, it is not one poem. It is a chorus. You title it The Quiet That Grew Teeth. You send a copy to every priory that ever turned away a question. One replies. A note, unsigned. 4 words. We are listening now. You begin planning a second shelf. This one for the books that never got written. You title it The Waiting. You leave it empty. For now, but not for long. You are no longer only a scribe. You are a steward of voices, a gardener of silence. Turn to sound. Your students write things you cannot understand, in languages you do not speak. You do not try to control it. You just provide the ink. One day, you see Estrell standing at the window. She's holding a book. Your book, the book of quiet things. Its corners are warm, pages soft with touch. She looks at you. You never wrote your name in it. I didn't need to. She thinks for a long moment, then opens it and adds a line. The man who taught the ink to speak. You pretend not to cry, but they all know. You begin a new project. 1 page. 1 letter. Every day. Not for anyone. Not about anything. Just to see what might happen. When the ink moves without expectation, the letters begin to speak back. They form shapes. Ideas. Memories. You're writing your own story now. Finally. It begins like this. I was not born with ink on my hands, but I chose it. Again and again. Winter settles in slowly this year. A kind of winter that doesn't announce itself with snow or storms, but simply arrives by dimming the light a little earlier each day. You feel it first in your fingertips. The ink takes longer to dry. Nib trembles when you pause too long. Your breath fogs the vellum when you lean in close. Still, the children write. The priory hums with quiet energy. Laughter filters through the halls in bursts, like wind beneath a door. Even the sternest of the elders has begun keeping a small book of questions. You've written none of it down, not yet. You're saving it for the year of unwritten things. It begins with a blank book. You bind it yourself, leather soft as butter, pages thick as skin. On the cover, you scratch no title. Inside the first page, only one sentence. What we do not say still counts. You place it in the scriptorium and say nothing. By evening, someone has written in it a single word. Sister. By morning, another. Bread. By week's end, 3 pages are filled with small, careful handwriting. None are signed, none are dated, but the book begins to grow. Anza adds a recipe for honey salt paste used to cure sore throats. Estrel sketches a fox in a bishop's robe. A boy writes a prayer in which God answers in riddles. Girl writes a letter to the sea. Someone pastes in a dried flower, then adds the words, "It lived." The book becomes something holy, not for what it teaches, but for what it permits. It holds grief beside jokes, lost names beside half-remembered lullabies. It becomes the memory the priory didn't know it needed. You don't curate it. You don't edit. You only turn the page when it is time. On the first snow of the season, a letter arrives from the east. It bears no crest, only wax stamped with a tiny, broken quill. Inside, a list of names. At the bottom, they were never allowed to write. Please remember them. You don't know who sent it, but you copy the names into the book of unwritten things. Not once, but twice. 1. List for the priory. 1 to be carried, sewn into the lining of your robe. That winter, your health falters. Not dramatically. Not yet. But you begin to notice the stiffness in your joints, the ache in your chest when you walk too fast across the frost-covered cloister. You tell no one, but you write a little less and read a little more. You find yourself staring at the books you once made, not with pride, but with curiosity. Did they say what you meant? Did they reach the ones who needed them? Did they open anything? You take down the book of quiet things. Flip to the back. Add one more thing. The ink never leaves, even when we do. One night, Estrel finds you asleep in the scriptorium. You've fallen with your head on a pile of unfinished pages. She doesn't wake you. Instead, she covers your shoulders with her shawl and leaves a cup of warm broth by your side. When you stir, hours later, the fire is gone out, but the ink on your hand is still warm. In late frost, a rider comes. His cloak is torn, his beard full of ice. He carries no sword, but his words are sharp. He is from the south, a monastery that fell not to fire or war, but hunger. Their books were burned for warmth, their scribes scattered. He carries a single page saved from the flames. It's one of yours, a riddle you once bound in the margins of a children's psalter. What weighs nothing, breaks silence, and builds everything? You remember the answer. A word. He asks to stay. You offer him a room, ink, and a blank page. He writes his name after 2 days and begins teaching calligraphy by spring. You wake one morning to find the book of unwritten things missing. Panic grips your chest. You search every shelf, desk, room. Nothing. Until you find it on the floor of the herbarium, propped against the root of the rosemary bush. The page is open. It reads, "Today, I learned to forgive someone who isn't sorry." You sit beside it for hours. The sun rises over your shoulder. You don't write anything that day. You don't need to. The children begin creating their own unwritten books, not literal ones, but ideas, words they say only to each other, games they play without rules, prayers whispered to wind, not saints. They talk of making a library without walls, of burying blank pages in the forest and letting the trees tell the stories. One girl barely 10 binds together scraps and moss into what she calls a sky. Book. Inside, drawings of clouds dot under each one. This is what it felt like. You place it beside the book of quiet things. Estrelle smiles. Do you think the old masters would have understood any of this? You smile back. Not even. A little. Summer comes late that year. The roses bloom in July. The ink takes longer to dry. You've begun writing slower now, not from weakness, but from listening. You want each word to mean exactly what it should. One evening, a child you've never met comes into the priory garden. She is carrying a book made of bark and beeswax. You ask where she got it. She says, "A boy gave it to me. Said to bring it here." You open the first page. Inside is a single sentence. Tell the ink-stained boy the fox is bishop now. You laugh until you weep. By midsummer, the book of unwritten things is nearly full. The pages hung with lives that were never supposed to be documented. Apprentices who lost their tools. Mothers who mourned in silence. Scribes who translated joy into languages that hadn't been invented yet. You realize there's only one page left. You do not know what to write. So you wait. It happens on the longest. Night. You cannot sleep. Your breath is thin. The fire is too low. You walk the halls like a ghost, candle in hand, thinking of Mara, of Estrelle, of the fox who asked the bishop if God had ever laughed. You sit at the desk. Open the final page. Write, "I am ready to be unread." Then you close the book. Sleep. You wake, but not where you were. The room is warmer, brighter. The walls are painted in shadow, light, and silence. You are not alone. There are others. Scribes. Poets. The girl with the poem about the angels. The boy with the cracked bell. They do not speak, but they see you. You are holding a quill, and the page is blank again. Back at the priory, Estrelle finds the book of unwritten things. It is closed, but something hums within it. She does not cry. She simply places it on the shelf. Then begins a new one. Same size. Same weight. Same first sentence. What we do not say still counts. And beneath it, in a smaller hand, he counted